Hi, guys. Welcome to ChemoGlow, where the glow doesn't define me. I define the glow. Check us out, guys. Our ChemoGlow podcasts are available where podcasts are being seen, listened to, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts to Spotify to Amazon. Everyone always asks me, well, where's your podcast? It's everywhere. It's even on Audible. So check us out. And if you're live right now on YouTube, I need you to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Share, comment, tell us what you think about us. And if you want to share your glow, you can email us at chemoglow@gmail.com. We are everywhere. So check us out. Now, we're towards the end of May. So next week, May 26th, Carol Weaver will be on. She is an author, a PhD, a breast cancer survivor, living with metastatic breast cancer. She's a motivational speaker, and she has a new book out called Pies to Die For. I have listened to the book, I have read the book, and I can't wait to discuss the book with her. She was so excited about being on that she thought she was coming on tonight. So she will be on next week. So join us. If you haven't read her book, please pick it up, review it, and see us next Wednesday with Carol Weaver. She's going to be awesome. Well, guys, we have been doing a lot of things this year. And when we take a break in June and July, we're still going to be making strides against breast cancer. If you haven't already joined my team, please do, or create your own team, because guess what? We want to fundraise. We want a world without all cancers. So let's make some strides against breast cancer. Can y'all believe that we've been doing this for over a year and some change now? And we started in February going every week. So every week we've been doing live guest shows. I have not had a week where I couldn't fill it in. And sometimes we had multiple people. On top of that, we do our podcast, which is separate from that. And that was weekly recordings. So we are doing so much. And like I said, it's time to take a break. There's a lot to go on during this time. And you guys are always giving us comments and questions and showing up for us. So we're going to take a break in the month of June. And I just decided in the month of July. I'm going to spend some time with my family, but you guys will see me popping in here and there. We'll still be making those strides, and we'll still be fighting this fight that is so important. So don't forget to check us out, revisit our podcast, look at some of our lives, and leave us a comment. Make sure you subscribe. And again, making strides is a big thing. You see, it's been on the screen like 4 times now, right? I'm not playing with making strides against breast cancer. I'm coming back to help them, and I'm looking forward to doing it. Some of you guys know that I chaired that event for quite a few years before I took a break. Well, I'm always volunteering. I'm always doing different things. And my guest tonight, I met while volunteering at UNC for the PFAC. Some of you guys know that that stands for Patient Family Advisory Council. My husband and I were asked to speak to new oncology fellows. So this person I met her first year in. I think she was only here, I think she said about 2 months maybe. We'll see what she has to say about that. But apparently, I made an impression on her. She made an impression on me. And she also joined the PFAC, and she's showing us from the other side, from the medical side, how we see things and how we can help other people who's going through cancer. So please welcome my guest, Jacquelyne Gaddy, MD, MS, Medical Oncology Fellow at UNC.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Gaddy, as Regina has introduced me. And Regina's correct. I moved here maybe 2 or 3 months before we met. I had the pleasure of meeting Regina and her husband, and I just told her I could feel the love in the room. Their love was inspiring. It was encouraging. But more importantly, your story, Regina, is what resonated with me. Your strength is what resonated with me. And the learning lesson I remember from that experience was I have to listen to my patients. My patients matter. It's not about me in these moments when I walk into a patient's room, when I shake your hand. I need to know who I'm talking to, who their husband is, who their spouse is, etc.
It's so important. And we're always asked to come and sit and do a couple of things. Well, let me say, I'm always asked, and my husband's always the one where they're like, can you get your husband to come? So he's done two things at UNC, three things at UNC that has been great since the caregiver conversation, sitting down with them, also doing a whole film for UNC. But one of the things that he liked the most was this one right here, sitting in front of individuals, doctors that were going to be soon talking and giving that news and that treatment plan, and that you need to see us. We're just not a number. So he was very impressed because we're asked to do things. And sometimes I feel that I'm just checking the box and I don't know if I'm going to resonate, if my story's going to go anywhere with anyone. So I was so happy that we were able to connect later and you were able to tell me that you did get something from that. So I'm excited that that happened and you were just in. How is it being a doctor? Before we go back to find out how you started this journey, how is it being a new doctor, a new city, and you're at UNC?
Well, it's a life-changing experience. I will say I have probably experienced the most life in these last 2 years. And I think that's because I am learning how to be an oncologist. This has been my lifelong dream for at least about a good 10 to 15 years as far as specifically oncology. UNC is amazing. You know, my best friend, my mom, they can all attest to the fact that UNC is where I wanted to be. I came here, I felt welcomed. I felt that I would have the opportunity to explore my research, to enhance my research, and to honestly fulfill a lifelong dream. And so much that I'm hoping to stay here permanently.
I'm hoping that you will stay here permanently too. Tell us a little bit how that works. When you're a fellow somewhere, what happens once you finish?
So we always joke that I feel like it's an equation to becoming a physician. You know, you start off after undergrad or whatever you've done pre-medical school, you then go on to medical school and you always complete a residency of some sort. And after completing residency, you then have the choice, do you want to subspecialize, which is what I have done in the field of oncology. Generally, for the field of medicine, subspecialty training is 3 years. I'm walking into my third year come July 1.
Yes.
And after, you know, during your third year, this is the most important year. This is the game changer where you then decide, where do I practice at? Where do I want to live? Where do I want to raise a family? How close do I want to be to my family? And you kind of apply all over depending on those said, you know, specifics that you want. And you just, for me, I let God take care of the rest.
Oh, I like to hear that. The fact that you're here and your best friend, and you talked about your best friend, who does not like to be on camera, but I do have a picture of her. And she is also a fellow doctor, right?
She is a physician. That's Dr. Terrence Spencer. We've been best friends since residency, kind of inseparable since then. And she practices primary care in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, wow. That is great. You had some really big mentors in your life who have been there from the very beginning. But I want to first talk about when I say glow, when I say, how do you define your glow? Who made you decide, or what made you decide that you wanted to go into oncology, this world of cancer?
So anyone that knows me knows Granny. Granny's sitting right behind me. My grandmother passed, it'll be 6 years, November 11th of this year. She had pancreatic cancer. Even before my grandmother's passing, my grandmother took care of everyone. You know, she had nothing past third grade education, but she was a nurse to many. She took in many in our home. I lived with my grandmother for some years. And I always kind of stood back and admired, like, how does she know how to do that? And who is that? And why are they living with us, et cetera? But those years, it was God molding her to mold me to now become the oncologist that I'll soon become.
And I see in one of these pictures you have on your white jacket there, you're with your grandmother, and you're also sharing time with other people in this photo that meant something to you. Because that is your grandmother's sister, right?
That is my Aunt Janie at the bottom in her pink, her fly pink. Aunt Janie, it was my mom's favorite aunt. It was the woman in Buffalo that was not to be messed with, but was so respected and regarded in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And her and my grandmother had such an inseparable relationship. They lived, 2 blocks from each other. And above that picture is myself in some overalls and Granny holding, at the time we would call him baby Jesus, but that's Emmanuel, who I was the youngest grand for some years. And Emmanuel came 10 years later. And then, of course, I'm kissing my grandmother there in that corner. And then to the right is Mrs. Porter. Mrs. Porter passed, it hasn't been a month. Wow. And her relationship, her and my grandmother were best friends. They were inseparable. And their relationship is essentially what Taryn and I now have today. We talk every day, multiple times a day about anything. So Mrs. Porter kind of stood up as my grandmother when my grandmother passed.
Oh, wow. It's so important to have people in your life that can share their glow, share how they're doing things. And like you said, she wasn't anything to be messed with, but everybody loved her. And women are so important in your family. And I'm going to go ahead and see a picture of your mom here. And the fact that you guys went to Paris. So tell us a little bit about your mom.
So my mom, if you know Kathy Bergen, you know she has sacrificed her whole life for me. If it was not for my mother, I would not be sitting here on this call. I asked her a couple weeks ago, I said, how did you do it? And she said, I never gave up. And I think through prayer, my mom and I still to this day, it was in medical school where this tradition started. I was struggling in medical school like every student. And my mom and I decided to start having prayer every morning. And we still do that 6 years later. But my mom, she's my rock. She's my go-to. And she's a single parent mother who has made me be who I am, honestly.
Oh, I love that. And the fact that Dr. Gaddy, MD, I love that they put that up there. But your mom also has sisters.
She has 4 of them.
4 sisters. How is that growing up, having all of these wonderful women around you to show you, to mold you, to guide you? How is that for you?
Well, at the bottom of that picture, my Aunt Barbara is right below my mother. And my mom and my aunt, they have a home together. And in many ways, my aunt helped raise me, throughout my whole life, she's been there. My Aunt Charlene, who many think I look the most alike, which is right next to my mother, that's my sister on one day, my aunt on another, my best friend on a different day. Yes. And my Aunt Cynthia used to be my other mother. That was what she was in many ways. And my Aunt Doris right there at the bottom next to Aunt Barbara, she's the oldest. She lives in Detroit. And honestly, it's a unique experience. All 5 of them are extremely different, but I still see my grandmother in many ways. I see how they were raised in many ways, and it's encouraging. My Aunt Barbara, I remember at my grandmother's funeral, she essentially wanted to show me off. Like, this is my niece, that's a doctor. But I get it. I totally get it. I think I have done my best to make them proud.
And the reason why I am focusing on family, because it's not easy being a single parent, making sure you're the only one, right? So the only one in your mom's household, she has to sacrifice for you. She has to make sure. We always say, I want you to have a better life than I did. And you always want to make your parents proud and the people who raised you proud, the village that raised you. Because it takes a lot to be a doctor. And you have those days where you just want to be like, you know what, this is so much going on. So I love the fact that you have this village, and you even had mentors on among the way.
Dr. Underwood, that's Willie right there.
What's his name again?
Dr. Willie Underwood.
Oh, wow. How did he play a role in your life?
So I met Dr. Underwood. I remember the day like it was yesterday, and it was literally, at this point, almost 14 years. I had just graduated from Spelman, so that would be 2008. I was walking through the hospital in my Spelman t-shirt, thank God. And it caught his eyes because he graduated from Morehouse. And immediately he took the opportunity to understand who I was walking through this hospital with a Spelman t-shirt on. And he saved my life. He was able to get me through my master's program when I first got out of undergrad, and he's still a mentor. I talk to Dr. Underwood once a week, once a month. He's an important man in my life for sure.
Yes. And you have another important person in your life here.
Dr. Quick.
Yes. Tell us the role he played.
So Dr. Quick has known me for almost 30 years. And, you know, I grew up in the same church that Dr. Quick went to back in Buffalo. And he has been my number one fan. You know, when he knew I wanted to go to medical school, which had been my whole life, I will say, he did everything he could. He did everything he could to make sure I became a physician. And then when I did get into medical school, he didn't stop there. He wanted to make sure I knew I was good enough to be here. He wanted to make sure I understood how proud I had made him. And he's still a phenomenal mentor to me as well. So in many ways, Dr. Underwood and Dr. Quick have both not only mentored me, but in some ways stepped up in some ways as my father as well.
Yeah. And that's important to have all this backing, like the village. How do you define your glow? I'm asking you all these questions because I remember before the interview, you were like, well, what kind of questions are you going to ask? Do I need to know this about oncology? And I was like, no. I'm celebrating you and your glow because just like you've seen me and my story, you resonated with me. And I'm so thankful that you're joining us and showing that it does take a village. And it was so important that when I asked you about, you know, give me a brief description, Spelman was in there, AKA was in there, you know, all the things that you've gone through, your family, the things that you want to make sure you pay attention to as a doctor, being in this field, because there's so many things going on in this world that we need more people like you when we open up the doors. And you actually had a school of docs. These are all doctors that you guys went to school together?
We did. I went to Loyola in Chicago. I remember when I got into medical school. So Dean Jones, which is on the far left, my far left, he's in the University of Buffalo t-shirt. That's who got me into school. I remember his brother-in-law called him and said, you know, I have a young woman here in Buffalo and she's trying to get into school. Can you help her out? Can you talk to her? And it was like immediately he did everything he could. And I wound up going to Loyola because of him. I had never been to Chicago. I had never stepped foot in the city. And that alone was a life-changing experience. And then on the far right, we always joke and say Dean Jones gets us in school. And then on the far right, which is Dean Mendez gets us out of school.
Wow. Having that family again, just walking in with your Spelman t-shirt on, knowing that meant something to a Morehouse man.
I agree.
There you go.
I agree.
So we have so many comments coming up here that I'm going to get to in a minute. But now that we've talked about how your glow started, what are some of those things that you want to work on as a doctor coming into UNC or wherever you decide to practice?
One of the things I started doing recently, Regina, you know, life will take us through so many transitions. Life won't stop, you know, despite me being a doctor, life won't stop, right? My life still goes on. But what I have started doing with my patients, and I do this almost every single time I walk into one of my clinic rooms, I stop for 2 seconds and I have a prayer, silent prayer with myself. And I say, usually, God, just guide me in this encounter. Let me be focused on this patient because my patients aren't there for my day. They're not there for I'm having a bad day or I had a rough morning or I was stuck in traffic. You know, as you know, personally, cancer is scary. No one even wants to hear as my mom would call it, the C word. So that's something that I aspire to be every single day is you know, it's for my grandmother, it's for my mother, but more importantly, it's for my patients. So being the best physician I can, a woman of color, You know, I always say to everyone, it's the time to be Black. It is the time to be Black. It is the time to be proud to be Black. And it's the time to, you know, encourage my young sisters that came from Buffalo, that are still in Buffalo, you know, that you can do it. Whatever you can do it is. If it's, you know, buy a new house, if it's, you know, bring your child into the world, if it's be a great parent, I would like to say my story shows you can do it.
You can do it. And they are so proud of you and they love you. And I can see that. Like you said, when we came in, we sat across, I don't know how many doctors was in that room.
Regina, probably like, I'll go on and say maybe 10 of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was one that did not really care about our story, didn't want to hear it. And that's the problem that I see happens. I had that experience where even down to the scheduler said, well, I'm having a bad day, and somebody called out and now I got to answer the phone. Well, I have cancer. Now, if you can beat that on this phone call, then we can talk. Okay. I remember calling my husband being so upset.
As you should.
As this woman telling me somebody called out and I'm waiting to be, you know, for my second opinion, you know, and it's so important that you advocate for your care, because your doctors are going to be there. Your physicians are going to be there, but you have to advocate for your care when things are not going the way they need to go. So being in that room with you guys really empowered me to continue to volunteer and to share my story and share my voice. And that's why I do ChemoGlow, because I really do believe that I have something here and I want more physicians like you on. I know your best friend does not want to be on camera. I might need to get her to do a podcast for me. I won't record it, video, but I want to hear how it is to be a doctor and what you're doing to change the world. It's a great time to be Black right now. So let's talk about it. Let's really, really talk about it. So what are some things that you're working on with UNC? You have a specialty. What is that specialty that you're working on there?
So if someone asks me, you know, what type of oncologist are you going to be? I am going to be a GI oncologist. I will be focusing on liver. I will be focusing on pancreas for my grandmother. I will be focusing on esophageal, gastric, and colon. Can't forget colon and rectal. Yeah. So I said about 7 cancers right there, right, Regina? And the beauty of that is how many Blacks are dying of colon cancer. You know, my grandmother is gone from pancreatic, and this is, of course, is not to take away from breast, you know, at all. But my passion is we need better. We deserve better. We need to be an advocate for our patients. And I think, you know, I'm a patient in some ways. We all are patients. I have a primary care doctor. It's nothing like walking into your provider's office and you can see someone that looks like you. I'm not saying every doctor has to be Black. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I want my patients to know that someone cares, that someone understands. You know, for me, I come from Buffalo, and I don't ever pretend that I didn't grow up with a silver spoon. So I can often see myself in these patients. And if I don't see myself, I see my grandmother. I see my mom. I see my aunts. So my research focus, you know, while I'll do GI cancers, I'm focusing on improving outcomes for my Black patients, for those that are, you know, underserved. I specifically will be working on improving equity for my Black patients in clinical trials. That's a passion of mine. You know, I know oftentimes patients are really weary, especially of color, about clinical trials. But that's where we learn. Those are the drugs that are oftentimes game changers for my patients. And someone like me, that I do believe in many of these drugs that, you know, I deliver, that I recommend. I want my patients of color to be represented. And then we can make, different decisions for what is the best thing for pancreatic cancer patients? What is the best thing for a Black woman who did not have any history of any cancers like my grandmother? What drug should we give her? It's going to take Black women being on clinical trials for this. So that will be my focus as a GI medical oncologist.
How hard is it to get Black women or Black men to do clinical trials?
As hard as it is for, I don't know, I can't even come up with an analogy or a metaphor in that moment because, it's kind of like COVID. So a lot of people are really weary of the healthcare system. For me, I'm the first one on Facebook to say you need to get vaccinated. And I'll go back and forth with my cousins that are telling me, this is the government trying to get us. And those thoughts are founded. They're founded in, Tuskegee syphilis. They're founded in COVID. They're founded in George Floyd. They're founded in Breonna Taylor. So it's really, really hard. And I think for me, that's the unique niche I have. I'm a Black woman of color that's able to say, I would give my grandmother this. So for me, it's not as hard as it may be someone that does not look like them.
And I am looking for a picture that I think I did not load, and I'm so mad with myself with you actually. You know what? Play with me and I'm going to find it. Okay. I will find it, and I'm going to find it. It won't be as pretty as the other ones, how they have a background, but this one is coming up because you did march. You did do some work, right?
I did march. That was in June of, time is all kind of merging together, but that was June of last year. One of my colleagues made that sign for me, someone I would easily say an ally. And that picture, it sits in my house. My mom wears it on a t-shirt because I'm not just a physician. I'm an advocate. I'm a woman of color. It's not just about my patients at times. There is George Floyd. There is Breonna Taylor. I don't care what room I'm sitting in. I don't care who I'm with. You're going to get the same behavior. I don't do the switching. I'm too old for that. I'm too Black for that. And I'm very proud to be who I am. So I push that agenda every single day.
What do you see? Because, we sit on different committees. I sit on the committee right now with clinical trials to get more Black men to do more clinical trials. And it's like pulling teeth. But it's the understanding of this is the reason why. How is it being a Black doctor at UNC, a place that you want to be? I speak very highly of it, but I understand we're actually working on making sure that everyone is being seen. And I remember when you came on and we were talking about how hard it is for you to be noticed, even with a coat on, even, with your coat, everything you have on. And someone said, well, why don't you bake a cake? Or take it and introduce yourself to everybody else. And we both looked at each other on Zoom thinking that we could see each other, because I was looking at you and you were looking at the camera too. I was like, but nobody else does that. Why should I have to do that? And I thought that was so interesting that their fix was just, maybe do it this way. And I'm like, but we shouldn't have to do it that way. How is it walking in your shoes as you're working where you're working at, or just being a doctor of color?
So I'll start with being a doctor of color. It doesn't matter. I can have on my white coat, a stethoscope, and the largest sign that says Dr. Gaddy. I am regularly mistaken for the nurse. I've been the physical therapist. I've been everything but the doctor. And, I've worked pretty hard, I would say, for this title. So that alone, especially as a Black woman, I think, as a Black woman in medicine, we are at the bottom. Medicine is very much a hierarchy where as we all know, the white man in medicine is at the top. And after that is the Black man in medicine. And after that is the white woman in medicine. And then comes myself, Taryn, and all of the other ones that are Black female physicians. So it's a challenge. It's very much a challenge. You almost feel like you have to like establish yourself and establish your worth. Now, specifically at UNC, it's a transition. You know, I'll say in the most politically correct way, they're working on it. They're working on it. And, you know, with that being said, they know things need to change, meaning UNC sits right in Chapel Hill. It's a public institution. We serve a lot of underserved. We serve a lot of, you know, people that just don't have insurance, which I love that about UNC. Mm-hmm. The caveat of that is there needs to be more providers that look like them. You know, if you want all these patients to come and get the care that I think we deliver greatly, they need to be able to see themselves. When they walk into the hospital, they need to see signs that say, not only white people work here. There are Dr. Gaddys here. There are, you know, Dr. Wilsons who I work with, et cetera. And that's no shot at UNC. That's every institution, honestly. As a country, we need to do better with representation of Black people in general, but specifically for physicians.
It is.
I will say, so Regina, I'm sorry. The one thing I'll say is that UNC, I've been in many institutions before UNC. You know, I trained at an institution named Roswell. Before this, I was at University of Buffalo. I was at Loyola. Hands down, UNC has it the best of those, meaning that they're far more advanced with recognizing, hey, we have a problem. Like even establishing the fact that there is a problem is part of the step that they need to take. And I think the next step is working on improving the diversity of the providers and also of the nurses. As you know, you know, our chemo nurses, they need to look like our patients too. So they're working on it.
I can say that they are doing a very good job with involving the PFAC to have a say of what's going on. And Erica Lee Mack, she's actually a nurse and she works on one of the chemo floors in another hospital. She says, as a Black doctor, do you find yourself being assertive or aggressive?
So I get real tricky with the word aggressive as a Black woman, you know, because that's the word, you know, we get a lot. We get aggressive. I'm always going to say assertive. I'm always going to say there is nothing wrong with speaking up for yourself and saying, this is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. And in many ways, you have to. You have to speak up, because if you remain silent, then, you know, Dr. Gaddy's just going to do whatever. I don't find myself ever being disrespectful at work or embarrassing my mother or my grandmother, but I never have trouble speaking up for myself. So I'll definitely say assertive. I rarely use the word aggressive when I'm discussing a Black woman, honestly.
That's good to hear, because so many times when we do speak up, we're seen as being aggressive, when really I'm just telling you what I need. Mike Lito says, how do you deal with AA patients who don't trust you because you are African American?
That's a good flip of the question. I like that question. I haven't had that much. I have not had that much. Most patients, 9 times out of 10, are excited when they walk in the room. I've had patients that look at me like my grandmother would look at me if she was still here. But I have had, you know, one patient's daughter comes to mind that always gave me that look like, who do you think you are? You know, we got that from her regularly. And in those cases, I put my mindset to focus on, I'm here for this patient. I'm a doctor, you know, I'm trained. We can't take that away from me. So I try to shy away from those personal issues. You know, medicine can get real personal real quick, but my goal always is, how can I provide the best care for this patient?
And that's that's what we're supposed to be doing. For my husband, he was very assertive. There was a note in our chart that said he's very involved in the treatment, as he should be. It should not be a
Absolutely.
surprise if I go there and you tell me to come back because the radiation was wrong, how we did it. And then, for my husband, what is he going to do? Well, I need to see the person who came up with the plan because I need them to see my face and see my wife's face because we're not the only, it's not like you can treat us as if we're just anybody. And that's what we did. And the doctor said, well, what do you do for a living? He's like, it's not about what I do for a living. It's about what you do well. So I need you guys to see our face. So I appreciate that to the point where when I used to come in, and if my husband finally let me come to an appointment by myself towards the very end, they were like, where is your husband? What about me? What about me?
Yeah.
But you could see that just sitting across from us when we were talking to you guys about, we come in as a team. You have to address the patient and the caregiver because that caregiver is going home with that person who's just told they had cancer, and they have to come up with this whole treatment plan. And not just there, but at home, on the ride home, on the nights when you wake up, when you can't get out of bed, when you're throwing up. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. So having a doctor to see not just the patient, but also the person sitting beside them is important. Even if that person beside them don't want you there, don't want you taking care of their loved one, you're still the physician, can't take that away from you. And that is so important. That's my soapbox.
No, I agree. And I think, for Tavares, like I saw that, he didn't say much on that, but I could see it.
Yeah.
I was so amazed by how much of a partner he was. I was so amazed by how supportive he was, the love that you guys had. But like you just said, our patient spouses matter, they're there every single day. They're the ones at home. They're the ones that are, we're getting the calls, I'm nauseous. What medication should I take? But they're right beside you as you are nauseated, as you are vomiting, as you are having to come into the hospital for whatever side effect and reaction you're having to, different chemotherapy. So, like I told you, I felt the love. Like I definitely did.
And that's being open to seeing who's walking through the door, not just what we look like, but who's coming through that door. Because would you say it's a fair statement to say when someone comes in and they are coming in for treatment, right? And you keep telling them that they need to do A, B, and C. And every time they come in, they haven't done that. How involved is a physician with a patient that is reluctant to do anything to help them through?
So for me, I get real personal with my patients, personal, because cancer is real personal. And usually on the first encounter, I ask my patients that come in with their spouse, Regina, I always ask them the same thing. I tell my boyfriend this every single time. I'll say, how long have you guys been married? The patients that have been married longer than 4 days, I ask them the same question. Well, what have you done to be able to stay married? I do that for multiple reasons. One, I am genuinely curious. Two, that opens them up. They are now exposing themselves. They're telling me, well, I go in the other room at night when he makes me mad, and we start laughing together. So now I've kind of removed a layer from them, right?
Yes.
And then I will always tell them I'm from Buffalo. And usually that will get like a Buffalo Bills joke out of them. That will get the weather out of them. And then they'll know me, right? They'll want to know, well, what brought you here? So I always start off my first patient encounters just like that, so they can remember that they saw me on the first encounter. So then about 3 months in, Mr. J, why did you not come to chemo? Like,
yes.
I don't understand how you missed this appointment. Where are you? What are you doing? And why are you still smoking? Like, how is this even happening? That's how I talk to my patients. And
I think that's important.
Most of them are just like, Dr. Gaddy, I'm trying, I'm working on it. But I try to remain myself through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my patients, and kind of like you, Regina, they appreciate that. I am who I am. I'm very genuine. I'm very open. And I'm very honest with my patients. So I can try to just push them as hard as I can to say, I know it's hard. I know it's hard. I know it's tough. Do you want to take a break? Do you want to, have a quote unquote, I hate the term holiday. It's not a holiday when you.
I know, right? Yeah, I was like, is this supposed to be a holiday? Okay, I'll take it.
Not a holiday. However, I work with them. I just try to work with them and say, okay, how can I meet you halfway? Okay, if you're not going to stop smoking, can you stop smoking a pack? Can we get to a half a pack? I kind of meet them where they are, honestly.
And that's so important. I like the fact that you asked, how long have you been married? Because we were only married 16 days before I was on the table.
Look at that, Regina.
Man. And a lot of people are always like, whoa, he stayed. And I'm like, was he supposed to go? But I realize in a lot of this, a lot of couples don't make it out. And literally 16 days married, and I'm on the table, and we are planning this wedding, and all this stuff is going on. So asking that question actually really helped us get to where we needed to be. They were like, oh, they're getting married. We need to get her in the surgery. We need to do this. And I love the fact that UNC takes that time out, at least my team did, to make sure that they understood me and what I was going through and what my husband was going through. It was so important to our treatment. You have to know us outside of cancer to help us fight cancer. Because really, sometimes you feel like you're fighting a losing battle. So I appreciate that you take that time to get to know that person. And they'll remember, she asked me about us. What was us before this? Because sometimes we forget. We forget us before this. We have so much love going on up here. I just want to get my sister. Oh,
that's
I love
Karen.
it.
That's Dr. Spencer. I told you she may come on as Dr. Khan.
Oh, yes, Dr. Spencer, we have talked about you because you have supported Dr. Gaddy through everything. And I love the fact that she can say, oh, that's my best friend in that picture. I love that. And you also have someone else who is supporting you. Oh, thank you so much over here. I love you, Jackie. Look at that.
That's Asiria. Asiria and I went to medical school together. Graduated together. She's practicing medicine in Georgia.
Like, I am so happy that we met when we met because we were supposed to meet. And when my brother was going through COVID, and my sister was going through COVID a little bit later, and you sent me a personal text like, if you need anything or you need to talk, please call me. And that's how our connection started. It already started at the very beginning, but the fact that I could give you a call or the fact that you reached out was so important. And I can tell that's what you're doing with your patients. You're going above and beyond. And you know what? They're going to be like, I'll just wait for Dr. Gaddy. Can I get on Dr. Gaddy's schedule, please?
Thank you, Regina.
Really going to want to see you. Well, what are some other things that you're working on?
So what I'm working on currently, I have quite I went from no projects to, oh my God, I have 20 projects. I think, so I'm working on a grant to, Dr. Lori Pierce is currently the president of the American Society of Clinical Oncology. She's the first Black female president of ASCO, which goals for me, I would say. And she has sat on the board for a grant that is improving representation of Blacks in clinical trials. So I'm working on that grant. I'm hoping to get that grant. I'm applying for jobs. I am currently working on, my biggest project currently is trying to understand why breast cancer treatment starts so much later in certain Black communities. It's interesting. Wilson is to the east of us. Wilson, where my boyfriend is from, they have really good numbers. You know, they're starting early, they're starting on time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to places like Charlotte and Raleigh, the more urban areas, they're not. And the project that I'm working on is trying to figure out, what is that? Why is it happening? And most importantly, how do we fix that? So that's going to be like my big project. That is something that I'll publish. That is something that I will present and ultimately try to change. It's focused in North Carolina, but the answers will hopefully guide us from a national perspective as well.
It's funny that you mentioned Charlotte, because that's where I was diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a second opinion from that diagnosis. I was not treated as somebody who they cared about, I felt like. And soon as I said, look, I'm moving to the Durham area because I'm getting married, but, you know, I was diagnosed here, I thought I would have more support. No, not at all. And my doctor at that time, my physician, she encouraged me at 30. At that time, I was 34. Go, you know, get a mammogram early. And she happened, Dr. Jones, I still remember her. She happened to be a Black physician. And she was like, I need you to go earlier than what they're saying. If you can go earlier and get a mammogram and get on top of it so you can get a baseline. That's all she kept saying. I just want a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And at 36, I was diagnosed. That's crazy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But in those areas where it's like pulling teeth to get women to go get their mammograms, so, you know, no news is good news. Absolutely not.
I agree.
But I also think it's also about the community that we live in. And so we had a couple of comments up here. Oh, from Khan. He says, what is the most rewarding thing about your job? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, so that's Ashton. That's my brother. That's Karen's husband.
Okay.
Yeah, and also a huge supporter of me as well. So I would say the most rewarding thing about my job is, so when my grandmother was dying, I took care of my grandmother. You know, for 6 weeks, my mom, her sisters, and myself, we took care of my grandmother. And the rewarding part of my job is that in my dark days, in my days where it's like, okay, how am I get this job? How am I get this salary or whatever I'm quote unquote worried about? I'm able to do something for my patients. You know, I have always been most attracted to the sickest of the sickest. My mom is always like, well, why do you want to do cancer? Because you guys are sick, because you guys are struggling. And I see my grandmother in that. So I don't go to work and I'm like, oh, you know, I see my grandmother every day, but the sickest of the sick are able to feel safe with me. I'm able to hold their hand a little bit tighter because I held my grandmother's hand. I'm able to sit down and kneel at their bedside and take off my white coat. And I think in a lot of professions, that's the unique part of oncology. Like, we become our patients' friends. You know, I'm definitely in no way a savior or a saint or any of those things, but I'm just doing my best for my patients. And I think in many ways, most of my patients genuinely appreciate that.
I know I do. And Africa says that she is so happy. Thank the Lord for doctors that truly care for their patients, and God bless you. You know, she is also talking about the doctor that I had, the fact that I could come to her. And it was so funny. I was late to her appointment one time. Dr. Jones said, I took the time out to be here. You need to take the time out to be here. Let's be serious about, you know, our appointment. I was like, okay, it's my annual physical. All right. She was not playing, but I just thought, thank you, instead of, oh, don't worry about it. Or that's normal for your, you know, for the population that you're in. Like, I want to know what my numbers are, not just based on what it is for, you know, the population, you know, population of color. I want to know, okay, what is the average number? It shouldn't be okay with me to be at this point just because that's a general statement. And you should be able to advocate for yourself and ask those questions. So being that type of doctor, knowing that I can come to you and ask you these honest questions, and you can be honest with me about my care without sugarcoating it. I don't know if you ever met Dr. Carey at UNC. When I tell you she's amazing, and the way, and she's no nonsense, but the
Of
way
course,
she
I know that.
handled my husband and for him to be okay, was she still had the soft touch of touching my knee and says, all right, so your hair is going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
We've decided to do this because you're right on that edge.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, let's get it all. But the
Mm-hmm.
decision is yours. So you're putting the choice back in my hand, but I appreciate the touch and knowing that. And now she can't get rid of me, even though she's like, you're not sick anymore. I need you to go home. So we have another question here. All my doctors and their staff know that I want to know my readings. I have electronic access to my medical records and I like to ask questions. And now they're giving you access to your medical records before the doctors can even call you. How is that for you?
That's a game changer. That's a
Okay.
game changer because it's a game changer in many ways. It's a game changer that, for the person that just said that, he's an advocate for himself, right? And that's amazing. But not everyone knows to look at different numbers like, okay, what does this mean? But just kind of getting it pushed to you, okay, this number is red. That's what I'll get a lot. I saw that this is abnormal. They won't know what the lab will mean, but they'll know it's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now it helps patients to be their own advocates in many ways. And it makes us responsible. I should have to explain what the scan says. I should have to explain what the lab says. I should have to discuss the results. And that's exactly why they did that. It holds us accountable.
And there's some doctors who do not like it.
I know.
We had a whole conversation about that. There's some doctors that don't like it. And I'm like, but aren't you empowering your patients? Like, they don't have to wait on that. So you are empowering them to know more and to do more. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, but I always believe in giving your flowers while you are here. So many people have said some great things about you. So I'm just going to go to the top of the list. And if anybody has any new comments, any questions, please go ahead and let us know. Well, we've already talked about Africa more. I'm going to go to the top because, goodness, you have some comments. Of course, Tony was up here.
That's my brother.
Yes, that's your brother.
That is my brother. So my mom is a single parent. My father is not as active, but my father has 3 other children, and Tony being one of them, and that's my brother.
All right, Tony, you're so proud of your sis. And Tammy, God bless to you. She's in Georgia, and I'm a friend of your brother's. Oh, well, thank you for listening, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Enjoy this time here. Okay, my producer has taken over my comment section. Thank you. I get to clicking, and he'd be like, okay, Regina. But I believe in making sure that you know how much this talk, you sitting on here, we get more views after our live, and so many people come up and ask me, hey, Regina, this doctor said this, or thank you for this, or I get text messages afterwards. So I appreciate when you come up here to share your glow. And sharing your glow is getting to know who you are as a person to become this great physician who's going to make some changes in this world.
Thank you, Regina.
Is there anything else that you would like to add before we get out of here?
I think I would like to thank my mother. Thank my mom for never giving up. I can't deny that. My mom has been in my corner for 35 years. She is my rock. She's my example. She's, anyways, my everything. So my mother, that's who needs the flowers, is Kathy Bergen.
Yes.
After that, her sisters. I wish my grandmother was here to see this moment, but I know she's here in so many different ways. So I'm very thankful for my family. my best friend, my boyfriend, you know, all of the people that have never given up on me. I think that's the biggest part is like this road has not been easy. It's still hard. But to know I have so many people in my corner that when I don't believe in myself, you know, my parent is like, girl, you got it. Like, you know, we got this. John is like, but you're a doctor, or, you know, this my girl, she an oncologist, y'all. Like we have this running joke, you know. So I'm just thankful for God's blessing. God has covered me so much in so many different ways my whole life. And I'm just, you know, just trying to go with the ebbs and flows that life continues to bring me. And just really, like, you know, we talked about earlier, standing still and having faith that it's all going to work out. God has always shown me that it always will work out.
Yes. Eugenia said, Dr. Gaddy, shine bright. Let me tell you, this lady right here was an advocate at Sister Network before she moved to Georgia. And she is so amazing. And just like she said, we need more caring doctors like yourself. I'm truly an advocate for my health, my families, and other. Bake that cake by just being the best caring doctor that you are. Yes, may the Lord continue to bless you. That's right. And I believe it was a chocolate cake too. I was like, I know she meant well, but it was just like, yeah, no. But thank you so much for being on. I want you to stay backstage because I have a couple of questions for you for myself.
Okay.
Once we get off the live. But Dr. Jacquelyne Gaddy, you have been a pleasure and it's amazing. And I'm so happy that we are forging this friendship together.
I agree. Thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity, Regina.
All right, guys. Thank Dr. Gaddy. Make sure you put your flowers in that comment section. And she talks about her village, her family, her grandmother, her mother, her boyfriend, her best friends, the people who got her in, who got her out. Guess what? It takes all of that to be a great doctor, to be a great physician, to be a great person. And she has all of that. So make sure you guys are subscribing to our YouTube channel. We have quite a few new people on. Go subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And if you guys want to share your glow, just email us at ChemoGlow@gmail.com. We're not just talking about cancer here. I am talking about what defines you. What are you doing now? Cancer didn't define me at all. And that's why I'm doing things and volunteering for making strides against breast cancer, because all cancers, I want them all gone. So anything I can do to volunteer and to help out, I do, including meeting Dr. Gaddy at UNC when we're doing all these great things. Well, we're going to end May with Carol Weaver, Pies to Die For. It is a perfect book to read. She's living with metastatic breast cancer. Second time around. I don't want to give you all of her book, but I've read it. I have listened to it. I have made notes for it. She's coming on next week at 8:00. We are going to round that out and we're going to take a break. But during that time, we'll be doing a bunch of other stuff because we're volunteering and giving back in the month of June and July. Guys, thank you so much for being on tonight. My heart is so full today. I don't know why, but it is. But I am so, you know what? It's because of Dr. Gaddy. Let's just put it out there. She's amazing. I'm putting it out there. She's amazing. Because guess what? The glow doesn't define her. She defines her glow. So guys, I'll see you later. Thanks. Peace.